Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Catunquit Chronicles, which has been broadcast and developed here in the island of Catunquit in our studio. We acknowledge the custodians of the land where we are broadcasting from today, including the Narragansett Nation, and we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. I'm your host, James Allen, and I'm joined here most weeks, and this week by the extraordinary adventurer, extreme sport enthusiast, and all-around great gal, Ashland, Comorack. Hello, and welcome to another podcast here in Catunquit, Ashland. Hey, I thought we'd talk about dentists and doctor visits, so dental visits and doctor visits today.
Everyone's favorite thing.
But I do want to tell you something just happened. It happens every time I go to the market. It's when I'm over in North Kingstown, I go to the market and,
Is that Joe's Market?
Yeah, Joe's Market. So I go to Joe's. That's good. It's a good market.
Yeah, I go there.
Good pre-prepared stuff, which I like. And so at Joe's Market, and, I'm in the parking lot after I've dropped my stuff all out of my cart and put it in my car, and my car is hot, So I go over to the cart station, and each time I stop and do this, and when I'm done with the cart, what do? Like everybody else, I smash that card into all the others in a row. Do you do this? Do you feel similarly about this? This very beastie kind of approach to cart
return?
Return, yeah.
I am the cart returner. I often go to Joe's with Stuart after mountain biking. So we're both there, and we have different roles when we're shopping.
Oh,
and I'm the person who returns the cart to the cart stalls. I wouldn't say that I smash. I'm going for, with speed and precision, so it, how the carts kind of mate up to each other. I try to send it right down the center so it's perfectly embedded in the cart in front of it. So smash is not the goal.
You're a precision mater. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
So it's more of a sexual experience for you.
Of course you would see it that way.
Okay. Well, who wouldn't? I mean, let's face it. That was a no-brainer. I had to walk right into that one. But there's something about vandalism, which I despise, by the way. Having been in the field of parks and recreation at some point in my life, I really abhor that kind of behavior. However, in this instance, in this world, at Joe's Market, and other markets too, I feel this need to smash them into the other ones. I'd like to get it, I do like to insert it properly as well.
But you like the sound.
But it's the sound and the smashing. But I'm not the only one. I noticed there was a young woman in front of me. There was an elderly person, all giving it their gusto to make sure that there was the sound at the end of that was satisfying. But I know that has nothing to do with dentists or doctors, but I also despise graffiti and littering.
I'm not a fan of littering. I'm okay with graffiti, street art. I'm even okay with, out at the fort, all the graffiti and stuff on the fort. But I think it needs to be managed in a way like, okay, on this day of the year, everything gets painted over and you start over again. I'm not happy. And the reason I think they should do this is because the fort gets covered in art and then there's no more space left. So what are these guys doing? They're painting the rocks. They're painting the trees. So I think if they manage the fort in a way that there's always space available, then these graffiti artists would stick with the fort.
Yeah, you use the collective guise. You're not suggesting it's only men that are doing this. However, on the graffiti issue there, I abhor that as well. I do like graffiti as art, but not on antiquated structures that, have historic meaning. I think that's just wrong. It's not good. And at times I admire the paintings, but sometimes I don't think it's good at all. And why do I have to be exposed to it? So I don't know. Maybe it's a thing for me, but I don't know. Graffiti, I always believe that if you're in the business of parks and recreation, that you had to immediately remove it so they discouraged the graffiti artists. But there hasn't been that effort down at the fort.
No,
and you're talking about the fort over near Paddle Road, right?
Yeah, that fort. Yeah, no, and that's the one in Catunquit where you see the entire structure is covered in art or graffiti, whatever you want to call it.
Now, there's another fort, as you know, on the west side, where, we often have seasonally have a lot of people living there in those RVs. And, there's some merit to that. But, there's not the same graffiti there. So,
that's because there's so many more people there. It's,
I see.
There's no way you could get away with it.
Okay.
You've got staff there all the time. You've got campers, and in the winter you've got all the dog walkers. So I don't think there's the opportunity. Plus, there's less real estate to paint on.
How do you feel about littering?
I am not a fan of littering.
So don't you think that litter can be art? There's a lot of artists that are using.
Are you carefully laying out your cigarette butts in the form of little flowers or something?
No, I have no interest in cigarette butts on the grounds of the parks. I was working in a park, and I was a director, and I was cleaning up the grounds during an event. And this car drove up in an Escalade, and it had a New York plate on it. No offense to those Catunquitonins that happen to be living here that once lived in New York. But this particular person threw his cigarette butt right at my feet as I was cleaning up. Now, I guess he could have thrown it somewhere else and then made me walk for it. But that was the most disgusting thing I remember.
Did you throw a brick at him?
No, because I wasn't in a position to do that. No, I did not. Violence never gets you anywhere. But I did pick it up, and I handed it back to him.
What did he say?
It's not. I said, you littered. And he said, it's not litter.
What is it?
In his mind, it's not litter. It was a cigarette butt that had a filter. So
no, I know, but what did he classify it as?
Cigarette butts are not litter. I don't know. He classified it as, F you, I think, is what he was classifying it as.
Huh.
So that's, the position I'm coming from with the litter. So I kind of equate it to any kind of vandalism. And, why? I guess there are places for art that are dedicated, right? So mural would be one, they get a place.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's, so in order for a kid who's into street art, graffiti or whatever, to get permission to put up a mural, I mean, that's just not going to happen, right? So they're not going to have the opportunity to express themselves that an established artist would, or even, know how to navigate the system to get permission to paint on the side of a building or something, a mural. So I agree, okay, the fort is being defaced and doesn't look like it's original, but it's kind of falling apart anyway. I mean, it's not being maintained other than for basic safety. And it's already it's been happening for years and years and years.
Oh.
Right?
That makes it right.
No, it does not that it makes it right, but at this point, it's kind of like in Providence, the guys driving around on their ATVs and so on. it's bad, but you have to understand that these kids and young men, for the most part, they need a place to let off steam and drive around. So, you almost need to find a place for them.
I have a relative that served there. My granduncle, so it'd be my grandfather's brother, served there.
Served at the fort?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he named his son after the fort's name. So I thought, so I have a little bit more reservation about defacing it. Oh, well, anyways. Oh, boy, what else is happening? Oh, I did go to the dentist. Oh, do you want to talk more about that?
No. I was just going to say, I thought you went to the dentist recently.
I did, and I had my teeth cleaned, and, there's a dentist, hygienist person that works on me. Her name is Sophia. She's middle-aged, so don't get excited, but I shouldn't have gotten excited, and I didn't, but, she's very nice. She's personable. She obviously loves her job, because after she finishes each tooth, she says in a hushed tone, almost sexually, yes. Yes. Yes.
As she's scraping the plaque away.
Yeah, she's scraping it. But, it must be as satisfying as if you were working at, like, a donut factory and, the donut, you found one of the donuts that was imperfect and didn't have a hole in it or something, and then you pull it off the line, But she says, yes, yes, yes. And sometimes she says, good, yes. So, I'm old, but I'm not dead, right? So this is an expression of, accomplishment for her, but the sense that she's getting somewhere, alone in my mouth is very satisfying as a consumer of dental assistance. A person like her that takes such gratification, from working, cleaning teeth, she should definitely be given Employee of the Month every month. But, it makes for going to the dentist a little more interesting, right?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the dentist.
No one would know that unless you told the world.
Yeah, I used to have a dentist over in North Kingstown that I really liked. Older gentleman, no nonsense. If you said, I don't need Novocaine, fine, no Novocaine. He didn't. He was just like all business. In and out, perfect. Once he retired, I stayed with that practice, but now I feel like a dollar sign. Like every time I come in, they're like, what possible extra thing could we do to get some more money?
Oh, yeah. Well, there was a point at which Eva and I we had double coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wasn't like pursuing the arts and, impoverished without health insurance. We have two plans. They got all worked up about that. It was a buzz around the office, right?
Yeah, so I that's kind of soured me. My first, this wasn't souring, this is kind of a funny for me dental story. Back when I lived in New London, and I went to the dentist, and they were like, okay, we want to do all these x-rays. And I was like, no, I don't need any x-rays. Just, clean my teeth, whatever, look at them. No big deal. And so the hygienist went to tell the dentist that I didn't want x-rays. And so the dentist came in and she's like, we need to do x-rays. And I'm like, well, no, you don't need to do x-rays. I basically, my opinion on this is that they will do a ton of x-rays all the time and it's unnecessary and costly. And
you might as well said that you're a communist, right?
Right. And so the dentist started to get quite worked up because I was totally calm about it. I was just like, no, I'm not interested. And she just kept pushing me and getting more and more agitated. And her final attempt to convince me was like, well, you need to have them. I mean, if something happens to you, then they can identify your body.
Oh, go right for the... That changed your mind right there, right?
I just started laughing.
Oh, my. Like, you might want to not get the extra gas and have your teeth done in that office. But, I mean, it varies, this weird stuff going on. I used to go to a dentist that would play conservative talk radio, and I'm sure you know what that is, in the background.
Rush Limbaugh?
As I'm having my teeth cleaned and then checked by the same person. So the dentist would do both the cleaning, which is nice. I think that's, what somebody might want to do. But I didn't say particularly which one, but that was it. And, then at one point the dentist said, give it 3 weeks. Try it.
Oh, you mean about the talk radio?
Yeah, the talk radio. You'll listen. You listen all the time if you try it for 3 weeks. So I left that dentist, because we didn't align politically. I didn't think dentistry had to be political. But it became that way because I was insisting that I didn't want to listen to that person. And then I went to another dentist, and there's, beautiful Nora Jones playing piano and singing in the background, who I love. I thought she was wonderful on the screen, and I'm listening to that. So that was my preference. And, it prepped my teeth and my libido for whatever comes next, And I've got the lady doing the yes, while Nora Jones is playing her silky songs. Oh, it's nice.
I don't think my dentist plays any music.
Oh, you're the anti-dentite music.
I'm not. I know that when I've had any sort of filling or something, I just put my earbuds in and play my own music or listen to a podcast.
Well, it's probably less expensive that way. So, another related story, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a little longer story, so I had to write it out because I just wanted to remember all the details. So, I'm 12 years old. I'm a nervous wreck because I cut the inside of my lip when I was playing baseball. And I love it. I never let that spot alone. I kind of kept on touching it with my tongue, and within a week, I had it produced an abscess. So my father brought us to Dr. Alonzo. My dad was his first customer, when he left World War II and came back home, and then he never had to pay. He always gave us a deal, I guess, or some kind of reduced rate, I don't know. So the guy was a naval dentist during World War II, so he worked on sailors all the time. The Navy apparently didn't have Novocaine because he worked on my sisters and me without any anesthesia. Imagine the sensation of him hitting that nerve with the drill each time he filled a tooth, and I can remember this distinctly. I'm still experiencing PTSD from that. My sisters and I are all survivors, and we share this together. But you mentioned that you can opt out.
My old dentist would, yeah. Sometimes I was like, no, I don't need any.
And
he would say to me,
bastard.
say, yeah, that's not really a deep cavity. It shouldn't be too much of a problem.
So he
would warn me if he thought, you might want to have.
Mm-hmm.
But it was up to me. That's the way I like it. I want to be a participant in my care.
Okay. Well, that's more than that's toughing it out, I think, because when you hit that nerve, I don't know, it's like nothing else.
It does sort of radiate through your jaw.
I'd prefer the lady with the yes, yes, yes. Well, Dr. Alonzo says you need an oral surgeon, and he recommends one in Providence and one in Catunquit. And he says the one in Providence is more experienced, but he's more expensive. No, that's all my father needed to hear, so we went to the one at Catunquit. So I'm sitting in the exam room, and my dad is in there too. This was by the time in our lives when we had moved to Catunquit. So, he thought that was better. By this time, my lower lips on the inside is hugely swollen. My dad's saying, "Just stop touching it with your tongue, James. Stop." So I stop for a second, and then, of course, I begin again. It's like that for about 30 minutes while we're waiting. Dad wasn't a patient man in the least. And while we're waiting, I can hear in the background sounds of torture, in the other rooms. No more, no more. My dad can't hear any of these cries for help because he lost his hearing during World War II. But anyway, can you hear that, Dad? I say, so while increasing my tonguing on the infected spot in the interior of my lip. So finally the oral surgeon says, comes in, he arrives, and he says, "I'm Dr. Justice. What seems to be the issue with your lip?" He says this while reaching out with his hand and his arm, and his lab coat was cuffed like right up to the elbow on each arm, and I can see blood on the back of his hand. The part that you can miss when you're washing, like in the back of your hand. So I'm kind of eyeing over to Dad to notice, kind of eyeing, shaking my head a little bit, so much that my eyebrows seem to indicate some kind of abnormality, and enough for the Dr. Justice to remark, You needn't be nervous, son." Now, I know that my dad has a real problem with anyone referring to me as son. It was just a thing he did, and I was his only son, so he had an issue with that. So he starts into, and he's shaking his head, and I'm pointing away with my eyebrows. We're like two nervous chickens when the farmer has a hatchet in his hand. So the Dr. Justice comes at me, ungloved, to open my mouth, and that's when my dad calls him out. "Doc, you have blood on your hands." Doc Justice goes into complete denial. "I just washed my hands." "Look in the outside of your right hand, below the pinky finger," Dad says, pointing. "That's not blood," Dr. Justice says quickly. "I've seen a lot of bloody hands, Doc, and that's blood," my father, a World War II veteran, says quickly. "Well, I'll wash my hands again, if you insist," he says, and goes to the sink to wash. He washes up to his elbows for over 5 minutes. And my dad watches, begins shaking his head again, back and forth, and I'm tonguing my infected lip like a madman. The doctor finishes, and without gloves, opens my lip, peeling it back painfully. I forget about his bloody hands as I deal with the pain. He calls on the speakerphone for assistance. The assistant, a young woman, probably 18 years old, only 6 years older than me, and very pretty, in her scrubs, and an odd hat that was bobby-pinned to her hair, comes at me with an apron and a cloth with a hole in it that they used to isolate my lip by pulling it with full force down and clipping a heavy object to the lip. They put suction in my mouth as I'm drooling all down my shirt through the cloth apron. I can't believe that there hasn't been any discussion about what they're going to do. My dad just seems to be annoyed about the time spent here already. Justice comes at me again, barehanded. My dad finally asks, "Aren't you going to wear gloves?" "I don't work with gloves. I get a better feel for the surgery without gloves. It's minor. It'll be over in a minute," Dr. Justice says confidently. My dad shakes his head again, but doesn't refute any of this procedural malfeasance. So I have my first foray into anesthetic when Doc Justice shoots my lip painfully with about 7 shots of Novocaine. I'm at first horrified, but then I get into it, and I'm trying to say things, and it's all weird, and I like it. My father says, "James, be quiet. Let him do what he has to do." "All right, Rob," I said. Dr. Justice holds my lip with his left hand, and with his right hand and a scalpel makes a quick motion on my lip. Instantly, the smell of pus fills the room. The young assistant gagged slightly and looked away from me. My father's head is shaking back and forth about 100 miles per hour. Blood is running down my face. Even the doctor looks concerned. "Nurse, get some compresses and hold him down on the spot." He says this and then leaves the room. The assistant runs to the counter, opens a drawer, pulls 50 swabs from the drawer, dropping at least as many on the floor, and rushes over to me as I'm still trying to talk. "What happened?" I ask while laden down with anesthetic, my whole face numb. These things bleed a lot. Hold this here," she says to me as she swabs my face with swabs. "Where'd the doctor go?" my dad asks. "He often steps out. It's not unusual," she says nervously. "Isn't he going to stitch my kid?" Dad asks questions that's on my mind, too. "Oh, yes, of course he will." Justice walks back in the room, washes his hands briefly at the sink, and comes at me with a curved needle. "This won't hurt," he says. I can feel only tugging and pulling at my lip, and I can feel the heat of the nurse standing close enough to hold me behind the head, her arm resting across my shoulder, her hand comforting me, her fingers moving along my round shoulder. I like it. He's done in minutes. Dr. Justice taps me on the head. The young assistant backs away from me, releasing my shoulder in her heat. "Don't drink anything but water for the next 5 days, and drink on the other side of your mouth with a straw. Keep your tongue away from that area. Don't cause an infection," he says. "You can't eat for 5 days?" my father asks. "Bland diet, with plenty of water, no food today at all," he responds. The assistant packs the inside of my mouth with gauze, and we leave the room. My father stops to pay, removing $76 from his wallet and handing it over. I imagine that's a whole week's pay for my father. Maybe not, but it's a shitload of money in 1972. He looks over at me as he's standing over the money and says, "Don't even think about touching that area with your tongue." When I arrive home, my mother sees my bloody and pus-filled shirt and declares, "I'm going to have to throw that shirt out. I can't get that stain out. You must have been through a lot, dear." My father nodded his head, kind of pointing his eyes at me in agreement with my mother. "He can't eat anything today and half of tomorrow, only water," he said, and went to his favorite chair to watch television. "I'll take good care of you, James," my mother said, while she sat me down at the table and produced a large glass of water with a straw.
So is this another true story from your childhood?
Oh, yes.
I had a feeling. I was worried that it was.
Yes.
I'm surprised you ever go back to the dentist.
I went from Dr. what was his name? Alonzo, yes. Dr. Alonzo without the anesthetic to Mr. Anesthetic with bloody hands, Dr. Mengele, which was rough. He was inclined to, I don't know, he liked to work fast. That guy liked to work fast, and he just bugged right out, right after the deed was done. I don't think he liked the excessive blood. It was wild. You know, that was strange. There was a couple of occasions where I went to doctors, and it was based on, fees. The fees were cheaper, so I went to this doctor who was in his late 80s. And he had charts on his wall that were faded. There were blood charts. He would take some blood from you every time you went. And he'd put it up against, and he'd compare it to the various blood colors that were on the wall on this chart that was faded from the sun directly. And that doctor, I recall I had just a wart removal, right? Like kids get warts. I had one right in the middle of my hand. And he had an electric device. I don't know if they still use the electric, but they so it was like a little dart of electrical current. I think
now they just freeze them off or burn them off.
Something like that. Yeah, it was much more simple. But this dude was going at it hard with this thing, like too hard, because his hands was shaking as he was doing it, because he was in the end time, and he hit a very major thing that was, the blood was spurting out. And he couldn't function. He left the room, too. So I had 2 doctors that left the room as soon as the blood came in. It's not very comforting. And the nurse, yes, she did the work. She stitched me up, stitched up the vein or whatever it was. That wasn't good at all. So anyway, a couple of wild stories from my youth, yes.
I remember my kid's pediatrician back when I lived in New London. Really nice guy, smart guy, but he did not like needles. So the nurse would do all of the vaccinations and he would just leave the room and he'd come back after it was done.
Real cool of him to get in that profession, right? I think we should hear some music. Followed by a wave. Well, Ashland, it's that time in our show where we play around with is it bullshit or not. And this seems to be, we've been getting some feedback, more and more feedback from our audience. And our audience likes, is it bullshit or not? And they learn a little something, and sometimes it's bullshit. Sometimes they learn a little about bullshit. So I have one for you. I'd like to start off. There's a law, it's called the law of fines, and service voluntarily rendered in relieving property from an impending peril at sea or other navigable waters by those under no legal obligation to do so. And then the part B of that is the application of the law of fines necessarily assumes that property involved was never owned or was abandoned, and therefore ancient and honorable principle of finders keepers applies. So finders keepers, the law of fines, is it bullshit or is it not?
I think the wording seems a bit odd, but I do think it is not bullshit on the sea.
It is the truth. It is the truth. However, in Catunquit, I had an occasion after a hurricane where I was cleaning the beach of 2 abandoned and what was the word? Abandoned and therefore, no, it was abandoned.
It was never owned or it.
No, it was abandoned for sure, and it was impending peril because it was a hurricane, and they were in the marsh. These 2, what are those called? Kayaks. And I threw them in the back of my truck. I had them in the back of my truck. I'm ready to go, and in comes the Catunquit law, and it told me I couldn't do that. Now, I'm sure the next car, the truck, whatever, came by and picked them up. But there is a law that states that I can do that. But it's not it's within the spirit of the law, right? So the law, in Catunquit, it probably says, well, these people are unfortunate, and maybe they left the police officer in place long enough so that the owners could.
Yeah, I don't know how the law applies to things that are just washed up on the beach.
That's what it is.
Well, I mean, a lot of the, like if you're out and something's floating out there, whether it's somebody's boat or something that fell off a container ship or whatever, I know that law definitely applies there. I'm not sure what happens in local things when somebody's lost something on a beach.
I do. The police officer comes down and says you can't take them, and he looks at you like you were
you're a thief.
And I just say there is a law of fines, but not that day.
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to do? I can't refute the police
it's not
officer.
worth.
It's there's something a little bit despicable about it. When I explained to Eva, she said, you were wrong. Don't do that. if you want a kayak, I'll buy one for you.
Yeah, I mean, especially local, and when you might even, you probably know that came off one of the kayak racks. So,
oh,
if
and I didn't think of that because, well, no, it couldn't have come off of, no, because it was on the, no, it had to come from the sea because it was over on the other side of the.
So did anybody? So what the policeman should have said is that nobody claims these; they're yours.
Correct.
Right?
According to the law, but not necessarily. Didn't apply that day. That's okay. It didn't. I'm fine with it. I just wanted to point that out. Do you have a BS or not?
I don't have one prepared.
That's okay. We're gonna see what I can do next. It's a very shelly wave, isn't it? You can hear the pebbles and the shells all clattering together. It's a great sound for me. That's the sound of home, Catunquit. It's time for a commercial break. Let's see. Let's start off with this one. Catunquit Chronicles is brought to you by Monk's Miracle Mayonnaise. You can use it for anything. In your tuna salad, to slather your oily bluefish before grilling, or even to wash your hair. Monk's Miracle Mayonnaise coats your hair in a protective sheath of Sylvan slather. With Monk's, you'll find the solitude you may be looking for in a mayonnaise. Try Monk's Mayo today. Available at Catunquit Market and made by the South End Monks, living off Ice House Road, right here in Catunquit. And you know where Ice House Road is, of course.
Right near Paddle Lane, right?
It's right near Paddle Lane, yeah. 2 references to Paddle Lane today. Very cool. Very cool. Over near
the fort.
The fort.
Yeah.
Yep. So there we go. We're also brought to you by Crocker's Pottery Shop and has all the locally made pottery you'll ever need. At Crocker's, we remain truthful to the process of making handmade objects from scratch. We dig the clay from ancient clay pit deposits on the mainland, secret and known only to key personnel, family members as well. Crocker's kiln is completely solar-driven. That's a crock of shit. We use gas furnaces just like the rest of the world. Come check us out at 31 Blue Green Lane, just off Catunquit, Maine. And we're also brought to you by Stone Frog Restaurant. It's for sale. And it's a turnkey operation. It's located in Catunquit, Maine. You can close on the business along with the building in one day, and you can start frying fish on the following day. So keep that in mind if you're a fish fry kind of person.
I hope somebody buys it soon. We need some more restaurants in town.
True. There needs to be some competition. It seems like the Oak is doing quite well. And the Dahlias by the Door. We're also sponsored by Dahlias by the Door. Come to Dahlias by the Door and enjoy paintings, sculptures, and keychains, all dedicated to the flower dahlia. Owner, operator, and artist, Dahlia Flor. Isn't that redundant? Dahlia and flor. Flor is the Spanish word for flower. So, Dahlia flower. Very nice. Dahlia, have you been in there?
Yes, I have.
It smells good in there, doesn't it?
It definitely smells good.
Yeah. I don't know how she does that, like 365, 24/7. Keep that place smelling like dahlias, but... All right, so the Catunquit Dump. Bring a bag, drop a bag, and take a bag. At the Catunquit Dump, you'll come home with more than you brought. So just a friendly PSA about the Catunquit Dump. And that's so true. I remember It was just prior to the time where Eve and I were talking about having children. And we were talking about it quite often. It's not how you get children. You have to do more than just talk about it.
But it's a good start.
But there was some of that happening, too. But anyway, I was, at the time, I wasn't, I didn't have the service to pick up the trash in front of the house. So I take the trash to the dump. And then I'd come back with, like, a lot of stuff, typically, which was problematic. And then one time I came back with this rather used, like, push cart for the kid there.
Stroller.
Yeah, that's the word. See, you helped me out. It's very good. And so I bring this back, and, of course, it probably has vomit, other things on it. And, it was just the wrong move. But it was really this kind of cute effort on my part, too. But Eva didn't take it that way. She felt like, oh, my goodness. This is what he thinks I'm going to take our first precious child and put it in this thing. So when the child did come, my goodness, did we ever have the ultimate stroller.
Super fancy stroller.
Yeah, you could run, you could hop over. I think it actually had a flotation element to it. So just to notice, Gallery Day is Saturday from 12 noon to 9 p.m. This is a big day. So you walk the streets and party with the pros at all your local galleries. Free wine and beer and cheese, too. I imagine you get crackers, because usually cheese and crackers go together.
Mm-hmm.
That always gets the people out on the streets. I have a quick story about that. However, when we were in college, I was playing college soccer, and the coach declared that we had this game that was rather important. We'd like to have a larger crowd. It was a Saturday game. Did I tell you this already?
Mm-mm.
Oh, no. So my friend, who was hilarious, who was a wonderful artist, he and I went to the shop, up on the hill, over near RISD, and we bought these giant chalks. The kind you can hold. They're very thick and thick chalk. And we went on the quad, and they had all the paths on the quad, and we wrote free wine, cheese, and beer at the soccer game, 1 p.m. Saturday, and the date. And we did this all throughout campus, but, mostly on the quad there. And, boy, did we have a big crowd for the first half.
But there was no wine, cheese, and...
Nothing. Nothing. It was free for the students to get in, of course.
Yeah.
So we didn't cause them any financial pain. However, when we got, through the first half, and we were up 1-0. So it actually worked in our favor, and we held on for a tie against the number one team in the country. So it worked out great.
And then those fans never came back again.
No, we kind of burned a bridge there.
You should have at least gotten some cheese and crackers and put them on a table, and like that it had already been picked over, so it was just a few crumbs, and spilled a bit of grape juice or something. Make it look like they were just a bit late.
So true. That would have been really smart, but we weren't smart. We were just creative.
You were just soccer players.
Just soccer players. But then, I had classes in my senior year when I was with a lot of graduate students at the time, all the writing classes. And there was always wine and cheese and no beer, just wine and cheese at the classes for the older students. We're all over 18.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Rhode Island College.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I had some wonderful professors that were, they got a little tuned up for each class. They're very enthusiastic. So it was good. But a good education at that time. And I still believe there must be some great professors there. There were some wonderful professors that had lots of accolades. And I was very fortunate to have some great adjunct professors as well. We have some music and a wave. Well, this piece this doesn't have anything to do with doctors, visits, or dentists, but it puts the reader, or the listener in this case, in a very familiar place that I often find myself engaged in. Where would that be? The diner. I'm always at a diner. I really believe that I find all the characters at a diner that I need, at least.
What's your favorite diner around here?
I haven't one at present.
Mm-hmm.
No, my diners go back to a different time in dining. I do like the 8 o'clock special, or previous to 8 o'clock special, over at the local diner on the other side of the, on the mainland. However, that's a bit of a trek to get there. Now it's very busy there, right? So I'm not going to go there anymore. Although it's very fine. Maybe we could get them to sponsor sometime. But this piece is called Super Dine Me. So it's a reference to what?
Supersize Me?
They are. Super Dine Me. I don't know. Do you feel like you want to read this aloud, or should I?
No, go right ahead. You are very good at it.
A compliment from the great one. Oh, my goodness. I'm just going to go home all chuffed. All right. So, Super Dine Me. A healthy person shouldn't eat 5 days a week at a diner. I shouldn't either. I've been watching her for days. I'm concealed behind a life-size advertisement mannequin that's dressed to look like the owner of the restaurant. I sit here each day, plucking slowly through franks and beans on Mondays. Tuesdays, pot roast. Wednesdays, spaghetti. Thursdays, tofu. And, of course, fish and chips on Friday. Fixated on the woman seated only 15 feet from me. I feel like I'm participating in a documentary about diners, perhaps named Super Dine Me or something. I think of bird names that most suit the woman's demeanor, like Oriole or Robin. Robin suits her. She pecks at her food, stabbing the plate like the ground to remove a single pea from the plate. But for now, as my mind races with words and images of her, I only refer to her as Crooked Woman. She's here every day, orders the same food, sits in the same manner each day, looking curiously to the left side, my side. She turns only her neck to do so. Her head tilts down most often, as if she were perpetually puzzled. Her right hand always stays below the table, hidden from view, suggesting an air of superiority. But that certainly doesn't belong here at all, in places like Stu's Diner. Today's offering, Tofu Thursdays, but she uncharacteristically orders a club sandwich. How will she eat a sandwich with one hand? A club is a tall sandwich. She orders it without turkey and bacon, replacing the meats with tofu. Of course, it's Thursday. While waiting for her order, she methodically lifts her hair from her shoulders on one side at a time with a single hand. She moves the mass of hair back in a kind of cool, sweeping motion, like a fashion model. Slowly, her waist-length hair leaks over her stiff shoulders like spilled coffee with extra cream. Her phone, laid face down at a favorable and aesthetically pleasing angle, vibrates emphatically on the paper placemat, irreverently jingling her unused silverware. A gum-smacking waitress moves almost like a Russian ballerina, her toes splaying out at 90-degree angles. She walks with a securely pinned club sandwich atop a heavy, well-used white crockery-style dinner plate. "You want ketchup with your fries?" the waitress expresses with a heavy local accent. Crooked Woman shakes her head and says nothing. "To each his own," the waitress says, then pins on toe perfectly, moving through the nearby swinging kitchen doors. Crooked Woman remains facing me, her head still guided by some unknown force in my direction, yet her meal is set perfectly in the center of her table where her torso faces. She moves the meal to facilitate her preferred angle, and with a single hand, her other hand still hidden beneath the table, she deconstructs the club sandwich, piece by piece, and proceeds to eat each section with a fork. I'm agitated. My heart's racing for some reason, and my forehead becomes sweating. Look up! Look this way, I say in muffled tones, desperately trying to will her attention. I've tried for days to woo her telepathically. I've decided that I truly like her. How could I, though? I don't know her. I've never spoken to her. She rarely speaks. I've never seen her hand. What if I would just go over there to her booth and sit down? What if I do that? What could happen? She could ask me to leave? That's crazy talk. I'm not that guy. Does she look at my way to see me or to frustrate me? There's so many questions. She's getting up from her seat. She's leaving the remainder of her club sandwich unprotected and available to open air. Her tofu exposed, cries out for someone to move it around her plate or even mix her food to distinctly different stations, or someone like me could reorient her seat. She passes me, almost brushing me. I look away when her eyes fall in my direction, focusing on the hand in her sweater pocket. I stand and pretend to stretch. Why am I pretending to stretch? Why am I standing? Why am I touching her food with my hands? Someone might see me. I finish what I've started and hurry to my booth behind the mannequin, easing back in place like one of the decorative vases or the sugar dispenser or the lazy Susan on each table. I realize that I've placed my hands in her food. I touched her saliva. Her DNA is on my hands, and the mayonnaise and bits of tofu still on my hands. I lick the remaining bits from my hands as she emerges from the restroom and stands at her booth facing her plate. The angle of her left hand deepens as she realizes that her meal has been compromised. I continue licking my fingers like a chimp grooming himself among the eucalyptus at the zoo. She turns to me. I stop licking my fingers, and my eyes meet hers for the first time. Her sunken eyes seem to drift back into her head oddly, as if she hadn't eaten in weeks. But I know she has. I've watched her eat. She always finishes everything on her plate and goes to the restroom. She never orders dessert, even though it comes with the meal. She moves closer. The angle of her featured nose grows steeper and steeper as she closes in on me. Her black sweater and now dark hair, no longer brown like sweetened coffee, is dark and greasy, stringy, and soiled. I don't remember her wearing black at all. It's definitely her, but she seems different since she turning from the restroom. My hands rest on the napkin on the table, seem at first to turn red and then darken in color before my eyes. Is she a witch? I ate from her plate. I ate her DNA, I ask myself. I stand as she gets closer. All these days I've wanted her to approach me, and now I'm struggling to slide from the booth to run from the restaurant. She moves quickly and pins me into the seat, blocking the only exit. I could jump over the table. I could scream in the empty restaurant, but she lifts her hand, a hand I've never seen from her old pilled black sweater, and a withered hand with pointed curled fingers points through me as I feel a pain shuffling through my racing heart as if a jolt of electricity were pulsing through me. At this moment, her age could be 35 like me, or she could be 70. I don't know. Her body, no longer long and lean, and that of a young person, seems twisted and hunched. Her pointer finger moves up and down before she speaks. I grab the nearest steak knife and ready it beneath the table. Don't order the tofu. It's the worst. Can I borrow your ketchup? She says this innocently as the color returns to her face and her spine straightens. She reaches for the ketchup with her once hidden mysterious hand. Her slender fingers reveal her open palm. I don't answer her. I hand over the ketchup and leave hurriedly through the front door as a bell jingles behind me. I wonder if I ever had a real shot at a woman like her.
So. Is this a Halloween story? No.
It's not a doctor or a dentist story.
Is it all in your imagination, in the panic when she turns around to confront you, that she transforms into this
you're assuming
sort
it's
of
me.
witch? Well, you or whoever the person is in the story.
Protagonist, yes.
So is it just in the imagination that she transforms, or does she actually transform into this sort of witch?
I ask you what happened, young lady. Ashland, what do you think? What do you believe happened?
I sort of believed it was the imagination of the protagonist.
Why, though?
Running wild.
What was his condition, his state, I guess, is what...
Well, I mean, he got caught, and then he panicked, and then his mind went crazy, and that's the way I thought. As it was happening, I thought, okay, she's some sort of witch thing. This is a Halloween story. Then, as soon as she said, the tofu's the worst, can I borrow your ketchup? I thought, okay, it's all in his head. He panicked, and he transformed her in his mind.
Well,
then he runs out and he leaves. So I don't know. Maybe he thinks it's real, or maybe he's just embarrassed. I don't know. It's definitely...
from the start, he's a kind of a creepazoid, isn't he? He's the person that, he's socially inept.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say it's. I guess it's on the fine line between creepy and, I'm sure some point in your life you have maybe not stalked somebody, but have engineered meeting or being in the same place of somebody you might have been attracted to.
I like the way they phrase that, engineered. Yes, that's true. However,
I mean, when does it become stalking? I think stalking, I don't know. That's a good question. Where's the line between...
Well, she doesn't seem to have a problem with the stalking.
That could be because she either didn't realize at all, or she's a witch, and this is how she dealt with it.
He's very observant of her, right up to the moment until she looks at him. He has a problem with this. He has a problem with socialization.
Yeah, because before he even touches her food, she looks at him on the way to the restroom, and he looks away.
Right.
And that's what he wanted. He wanted her to notice him.
Yes, but he wasn't able to do the eye contact, and he struggles with that. And then as soon as the eye contact came, he turned her into a witch in his mind. And then back out of witchdom again, and then he didn't know how to deal with it, so he left, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You're trying to reach out to a significant number of audience members that might be interested in the weirdness and paranormal, but this is on the edge of that, for sure.
No, but it's a good story because it gets you talking about what, we just had a whole discussion about whether she was a witch or he imagined her to be a witch.
So cool that this is more discussion than we normally have, so something that touched a nerve, perhaps. Have you been that person? Are you the witch?
Am I the witch? I also do think that people can, obviously you can't transform your hand into a withered claw and all that bit, but you can sort of transform your demeanor to go from somebody pleasant to somebody scary.
So true. It's true about human beings.
Yeah.
We all have many sides. Good. Hey, let's go to I have another thing I want to say in a minute. It's been an interesting week a week that's like a year in the political world. City president has determined that he might be best that he not go on. I want to thank him for his service to the nation and to Catunquit, of course.
And thank him for his...
President Joe Biden.
His decision to not seek re-election.
And to the new candidate, wishing her well as she goes forward. And let's hope that there aren't any more situations where there's guns involved. That's just a horrible situation there. So let's hope the Secret Service can get their things together. James Carville said, and he said it, he was always thinking. He said at one point, he said, to run for president, you have to have a big idea. And then he said, recently, the only certainty I can predict is uncertainty. And he's so right about that with everything that's happened recently. So, well, how does a presidential race relate to the island of Catunquit up here in the Northeast? I don't know, but I think everybody has to take part, do the job of supporting whoever they support, and do it peacefully.
Yeah, vote.
Talk to people. Let's all talk to one another about this stuff without the vehement approach. Let's go at this in a different way this time.
Yeah, let's be civil.
Yeah, vote's good. Let's all vote. All right. So, our listeners have spoken. We've received at our Catunquit Chronicles at gmail.com, we received note that our National Blank Day isn't as popular as we thought, and therefore will be curtailed. It seems our listeners don't like it. Maybe the first one was okay, but after that, we're going to give that a rest. So National Blank Day has been curtailed. It doesn't really relate to our town that much, does it?
No, I think if we see a national day that's somehow related to the town, then we can bring it up. But I don't think we need to talk about National Thermal Engineering Day.
No, true. We could go with Catunquit Blank Day, because every day could be something happening here in Catunquit. That's for another day to talk about. And we're rolling towards the end of our podcast, and we're going to go with the music. Bye.
Bye.
All right. We'll see you soon. You're bringing the beer, right?
Of course.
That's
the homebrew.
That's your thing. Beer and honey. Can you bring some honey?
I can bring some honey.
Okay, I'll bring the clams.